Hello, everybody, and thank you so much for joining us today. My name is Jonah from Discover, and today we are going to be talking to Michael and Alessio. How are you two doing?
Yeah, thanks for asking. Yeah, so it's an ordinary day, if I may say, except this presentation.
Fair enough. Well, and today I'm gonna do my little spiel so everyone knows where we are, what we're learning today. Like I said, we are talking to Michael and Alessio, and we are going to be talking about how to do a successful language exchange. And Michael and Alessio are going to show us how to overcome the most common problems with language exchanges so that you can improve your speaking skills. And it's a fun time. And a couple things, if you have any questions throughout the presentation or the event, feel free to pop them in the comments. Also, feel free to pop in there, let us know where you're tuning in from, something you're excited to learn, maybe how you heard about Michael and Alessio or how you heard about Discover. We love hearing all of that. And if we don't answer your questions right away, we are not ignoring you. We have set aside time at the end to do a proper Q&A, so we'll get to them there at the end, and feel free to pop them in again if it seems like we didn't see them. And also, if the presentation is moving fast or you have to get up away from the computer, move around, don't fret. All of this will be available in a replay. It'll be here on the Discover page. It'll be on YouTube, and it'll also be emailed to you along with the course offer, which we'll talk about a little later. And before we dive in, just for anyone who doesn't know you two, would you each like to introduce yourself, a little background on yourselves?
Yeah, I'm happy
Michel,
to
you can go
start.
first.
Yeah, so I'm Michael. I'm the creator of Smarter German. It's an online school for German learners, and it's not a typical online school which you might have gone through or noticed. I created courses for you to study on your own with help, without the help of a tutor. Used to be a tutor myself, but made myself redundant as a first person. And so you're more flexible, and it is also easier to work with my courses because I explain everything in English, which is necessary, to be honest, to get there. And that's just a rough outline, but there's so much more to it. And I also offer courses made by other creators like Alessio, which will introduce himself in a minute. And because he has certain skills that I don't have, or let's say I don't want to go in that direction. So we kind of supplement each other, and I'm actually proud of being able to present this presentation today, which will promote his latest work, the Tandem Training. But he also has created a course, the German Grammar Genius, which is an in-depth look into the German grammar, but in such a satisfying and enjoyable way that I can only recommend that you check that out as well, even though the topic today is a different one. And now I give the scepter to Alessia.
Thank you for having me here. My name is Alessio. I'm from Italy, but I've been living in Germany for 13 years now, and I consider myself a small polyglot. I talk my 5-6 languages, and I love learning languages, learning stuff in general. And for the last 6 years, I've been working as a language coach. So I focus on helping people learning languages more efficiently. Kind of a teacher, but mostly focused on methodology. So because I'm a self-learner myself, so I think to have control over the learning process is very important and satisfying. But also methodology is not trivial when confronting something so complex like a foreign language. And I like innovation. I like to invent new things or to try to push methodology in learning further. And that's what I did with my work. And with Michel, of course, we found a perfect match because he also likes to go behind the traditional. And so, this is the second course we are doing together. And I'm very, very excited about this and very, very proud of what we did. More excited, and also want to know what people, what you think of these ideas, these approaches, and especially this course because it's something which has never been done before. And I've never seen anything on language exchange out there. I looked a lot over 15 years of learning, and there is nothing out there. So I'm really, really excited. That's it.
Yeah, well, I'm super excited to learn more. Michael, should we launch into the presentation and then we can get into questions and dive a little deeper after that?
Yeah, let's do that. I keep it short
Yeah.
as well. Yeah.
Yeah. I'll bring it up and you're ready to go.
Yeah, I can see. Can you see it already, right?
Yeah. Yep.
Perfect. Good. So I'll walk you through a very short presentation because all the details of what I'm going to say today you will find in the Tandem training. And a tandem, just to start with, might be a very German word. I'm not even sure whether any other language uses that. Usually it means a bike for two, but it also means to just tie yourself to the belly of a crazy man and jump from a plane. And I think at times it rather feels like this. It's less of a ride than a fall. So let's see how we can make this enjoyable. Quick presentation. I like to keep things short and crispy because your questions are actually the juicy part of such an encounter. We have the unique opportunity to communicate with each other. So let's make use of it. Yeah. And you don't need to take notes or remember much because you can always review this little webinar. So a tandem is basically, or it is exactly a language exchange. And that doesn't mean you give your language away and get another one in return. You simply practice your language for a certain amount of time while another person is cooperating and supporting you in doing so. So if you're a German learner, which is my main field of operation, you look for someone who speaks very good German. Ideally, it's a native speaker, but even a progressed other learner will do. And for 30 minutes, for example, you will speak German in a certain manner. I go into detail in a second. And all this, of course, depends on the partner. And we all want the ideal partner, right? The one. And like whenever you look for an ideal partner, there's a couple of conditions that you might look for. You, of course, or ideally like each other. That already excludes quite a few people from potential tandem partners. But you can also go for someone you don't like. That might be an interesting experience. But I think most of us have a preference to find someone enjoyable and interesting to talk to. If you find someone that you really have nothing in common with, even though you can, of course, work on certain topics very rationally, I'm curious to hear later what Alessio will say to it. But it really makes things a lot lighter and easier if you have common ground, something you can really communicate about. Yeah? By nature. So it might be, of course, interesting to find someone your age. Maybe it's the opposite. Maybe you find it more interesting to find someone that's a lot older or younger, same gender, different gender. It's all a bit about your preferences. Yeah. So there is no right or wrong. It's really what is it that you're looking for. Ideally, you have the same level, a language level, because if you are a total beginner in German and your partner is looking for English and he's a progress learner, it might not be so easy to come together, but you can try. Yeah, it's not a condition. I just find it nice to operate on the same level in each other's languages. And I would recommend a language exchange around level B1, B2. I know Alessio also recommends doing it earlier, and I can see how that also works. It might be a little bit more work, but it depends on the company. So availability is a no-brainer. We come to this anyhow. If you just don't manage to find an appointment, a point in a day and a time per week, then something is off or it doesn't work. And an alternative to that is you can, of course, pay someone for it. That, of course, is not a language exchange, but I want to put this out there anyhow. It has advantages and disadvantages. That means, well, it has an advantage because if you pay someone to listen to you and support you when you speak German, you save half the time because you don't have to speak half the time the other person's language, which is a language you're familiar with anyhow and don't want to learn. Yeah, it takes certain elements away from it as well. Another advantage is you have a professional who does the structuring and the preparation and therefore saves you a lot of time, creates a safe environment in which you feel relaxed and motivated to actually practice. Now, the question mark behind the professional is that true professionals are also not too easy to find. There's many platforms where native speakers offer their services for money. The problem with that is that they are not necessarily professionals, yeah, and you have to figure that out. And that can also go down a different route, because if you have a bad tutor, because that's what this would be, or speaking partner, then you might lose motivation, yeah, and lose money, of course. Let's say you take 80 hours meeting them twice a week for half an hour, maybe even an hour. So it's 40, what is that, 8 hours a month. It's 10 months, which is a reasonable time to get to B1, B2, depending on how much time you invest. And if you only paid €10 or $12, I think, you can see where this goes. And usually people charge a lot more, especially if they are true professionals. So you might as well quadruple this. Yeah, so you can spend quite a lot of money on it if you pay for it, which is, I think, what makes the free version so attractive to many people. Yeah, and the question is, if you pay someone to talk to you, what kind of connection does that establish? It's a very professional one. It's a distanced one. With a private person that you might get closer to at one point, there is a certain spice in the connection that might make the difference for you, and that might get you to a certain different experience of practicing German. Just a few thoughts. Yeah, these are just really thoughts for you to consider at one point. There's a couple of common problems. There's a possibly longer list of problems, but let me focus on a few, not to overwhelm you. A language exchange is effort. And how much effort, that's defined by you, how much effort you want to put into it, and also your partner. It is a complex undertaking, and I'm not sure whether you're aware of how complex communication already is in your native language with certain people. Yeah, because no matter sometimes what you say or how you phrase it, some people will not get it. And do this in a language that you are not, that you don't have common grounds in yet. Because you're both learning each other's languages, you kind of don't have a common language except the one you learn. And that gets tricky when you're on level A1. And that's one of the points that speaks for working with non-natives, but we get there. Due to the fact that it's highly complex to really communicate in an efficient manner, you need structure. If you don't have structure, still entertaining for sure, can be, but it very likely goes like these arrows from that lady's head into nowhere. If you have structure, like with everything, if my body didn't have any limits, I would just be a blob of meat and blood. Same with a tandem. If you don't have structure, it's just a blob of something, and might be a nice blob, but it will very likely not lead you to certain places. And wherever there is structure and there is a goal, you require discipline. And discipline is a word that I like. It actually kind of means instruction and knowledge from its root, but we use it to punish ourselves. Yeah, so I would say it's something in between. It requires you to maybe not always give in to your desire not to do the work today, but rather overcome your, how do you call this in English? In German, we have this beautiful word, innerer Schweinehund, the inner pig dog. Yeah, so you try not to procrastinate all the time, because it's just not 100% what you want to do in this moment. So discipline is a topic. And if you're not a disciplined person per se, you can try to set up a outer structure, which the tandem training we show you later will also, of course, help you to do. And of course, one of the biggest problems is that a tandem exchange involves human beings, and humans, right? Always problems. No humans, no problems. Very simple solution. But what I mean with that is, it's really, you need to come together, you need to arrange things, you need to look at each other's expectations and also perceptions of things and communicate that. But on the other hand, that's very likely why you learn a new language as well, that you want to expose yourself to more of these human problems with even more humans. Yeah, right? So it can be a bumpy path at times, but on the other hand, working with humans is, of course, very rewarding, especially when you go through hardship for a while. There's a couple of things that are buzzkills, might be very obvious. Just want to walk you through this quickly. And buzzkills basically means it takes completely the joy out of anything. And this one we might discuss. Yeah, I'm also curious what you say, Alessio, later. Different language levels, it might be a buzzkill. It might actually not be. Let's discuss this later in the Q&A, because you might have the desire to speak on a higher level, and somehow you might be blocked by the other person's inability to adjust to it. But let's see. If you don't find a time and place, if you don't have the time and you just want to use a Tandem to save money for a tutor, you might absolutely better not even start. As I said before, if you have nothing to talk about, even though you might find some artificial topics to discuss, if you're really not interested in these topics, it's a kind of difficult conversation. We say zäh. It's really like you're pulling it. You're pulling teeth. Yeah, it's like pulling teeth. And yeah, it's an interesting experience, but maybe not what you might be looking out for. And if you have no connection to the other person, and this, from experience, might not only be an intellectual connection, might also be an emotional, maybe pheromonal, who knows how this all works, connection. Sometimes there's just no vibe between two people. And if that's not there, might also just be better to look for someone else. Yeah, no discipline. I mentioned it quickly. The problem with discipline is if you don't have it, the question is, why don't you have it? And if you really don't have it and don't know why and how you can change that, how can you get into a routine or how can you unlearn non-discipline? How can you become a disciplined person? That alone would possibly require a full course, maybe years of therapy. Something interesting to think about. If you're not disciplined, how do you expect to be disciplined in this field? Yeah, what could that change? Very interesting. No concrete answer to this at this point, just a few ideas. And the buzzkill, this is not a buzzkill, this is basically my conclusion of all this. Don't force it. And I speak from my own painful experience. I've been trying to force my tandems because, it was cheap, was nice, maybe was a nice fellow. And take it easy. It's just a tandem, a language exchange. Yeah, it's not your future spouse. Yeah, it's also not a family member. Maybe, who knows? It's all possible, but in general, it's foreign people. So yeah, a few tips. It helps, and the Tandem Training, unless you create it, of course, and also my courses make that very clear that you need clear goals. If you don't know where you're going, you're moving, but you possibly are not moving forward, or you're not getting to where you intuitively actually want to be. So let's say you learn German, you want to, of course, be fluent in German at one point. Some people don't want to speak necessarily, but let's assume. But if you don't know how you want to get there and what the goal looks like, you might just stumble around and might lose a lot of time and also energy on the way. Same with a tandem, of course. As I said before, a clear structure is absolutely crucial. And I also, again, speak from my own experience. I always loved school because they structured everything for me. I just had to eat the food that was put in front of me. Going to university took me years to learn how to structure things, ironically, because my mind is highly unstructured. And I love that. I love the chaos. But I'm also capable now of structuring certain elements of my life. And as you can see in my German courses, which are highly structured for very good reasons, you just have to sit down and eat the delicious food I cook for you. Same here. Create a structure that is fruitful, that helps you to get through difficult times as well. A good structure is something you can hold on to when things get a bit tricky. Preparation, I think, I'm not sure whether I have to mention much what that means. The better you prepare, the more you get out of the real thing. And how to prepare is something Alessio covers in his book. You can arrange, just one example, you can arrange a certain task you want to do next time, and everybody prepares the vocabulary for it. Or you read a little short story, very short, and you will talk about it, but then you prepare by reading it and by maybe memorizing the vocab. and maybe preparing a little presentation. So it's a lot of time actually that goes in preparation, possibly as much time as in actually executing the tandem, and therefore prepare. And a common rule in learning languages, but possibly learning anything, is rather meet more often over a shorter period of time. Let's say twice a week is a good frequency. If you have too much time at hand, then 3 times a week. Not sure whether I would do it more often because there's other things to do. And rather than having a 2-hour hammer meeting in which you just are absolutely tired and burned out afterwards. A good point of view when working with a tandem partner is that you are not necessarily friends, even though you might become friends, and you're not life partners, even though that might happen. You are more or less colleagues working on the same task and the same project. And that will help you to overcome certain emotional issues. Maybe sometimes you feel misunderstood, and maybe that helps you to voice anything you feel, which is very, very helpful when working with people. Yeah, and it's much harder to do this with people that you're very close with. Yeah, and again, it's all fine if you do a tandem with someone that is close to you, but maybe even then you can say, okay, in this time when we do this exchange, we are colleagues, and afterwards we are friends again or family again. And again, from my own experience, I spent far too much time on meeting up with people. Last 3 sessions possibly always were like, how do I say I actually don't want to continue? Try to learn to say goodbye. It's not necessarily breaking up with a dear friend or a lover. It's really you had a task and you see the task doesn't work out for you, and maybe you can discuss why, so everybody takes something from it, but it's fine. Yeah, you're not breaking anyone's heart. You're just being honest, and it's the most rewarding thing you can do, to be honest to someone in a gentle manner, maybe, ideally. Just quick introduction, even though Alessio already introduced himself, allow me to share your age. It always matters a little bit. Life experience comes with age, yeah, so it's not always a bad thing. I'm way older than that even. And next to being a polyglot, Alessio is actually a philosopher, which I really, really like. And he has the ability to explain very complex matters in beautiful language. And he has shown that in his language coaching and also in his German Grammar Genius course that you can find on Smarter German, and also the Tandem Training. Yeah, it's a beautiful mind. And that's why I'm so thankful to have been able to offer his courses on my platform, and I worked through them as well, and I just love it. So the course we are talking about today here is the Tandem Training, the language exchange training. Contains roughly 50 lectures. It is basically a manual for successful tandems in which you find anything you need to organize and execute and reflect on your language exchange. And of course, it will address all the points I have just mentioned barely here and way more. And you normally have to pay $30 exclusive VAT. If you're in Germany, you have to add another 6. But let's take American prices. But at Discover, we say no to that. We offer it for half the price. Yeah, and that's not all. This is an offer for 1 week until Valentine's Day. Yeah, so make sure if you want to gift this to your Valentines, this is a good opportunity. But you also get a 30 days money back guarantee. And by then you might even have worked through the course. We trust you. If you work with our course and you find it good, that you will not ask for your money back, very clear. Yeah, and if you find good reasons not to continue or to ask for your money back, it's your decision. It's you. I don't want your money, and hopefully Alessio also not, if you don't like what you have gotten into. And I'm a guy that would actually charge you for a movie in cinema after the movie based on whether I liked it or not. That would be my approach to these things. Yeah, might change the way we create movies, but at Smarter German, this is always the deal. There is a way to preview the course. Maybe Jonah can share the link to the preview. Right now, we don't have a preview button. It's a technical issue. My developer got COVID. So many people lately. But there's a link that you can click on and you can work through the first 6 lessons. And you can also see on the left side the curriculum. You can see the topics. So click on that link and take a look. Purchase the course on Discover for this discount. And now we can switch to the Q&A with Alessio, where Alessio can answer your questions as well. Just shoot away. Yeah, thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Took something from it.
Yeah, thank you. And real quick for everyone watching, just want to point out the links to the course are in the comments and they're in the description there. And just want to make sure you know that discount is there only for a week, so take advantage of it while you can. And just to get started, I did want to ask a couple questions about the course and just or how it flows. So are you connecting people with this, or you're just teaching them how to work with each other?
Good question. Can quickly answer that, Alice. It's a simple question. I'll leave the complex ones for you. No. That would require a whole startup with a whole team.
Right.
But there's other tools which we point out, of course, where you find
we explain how to use the tools. There are 2 sections about how to find tandem partners and where to meet and how to structure the meetings and so on. Strategies. Actually, this is a very important aspect, right? To find tandem partners. There is a couple of tips I would like to add to your presentation, which are very important just for those watching this video. Maybe one is about this, so I just can use this occasion to. One of the biggest mistakes people make is that they look for 1 tandem partner, but you should look for 10, in the sense that 90% of people you're going to meet, you're going to write to, for example, on a platform like could be Tandem, it's an actually app, or HelloTalk, or so on. We have a list and explain how they work. Out of 10 people, 3 will never answer to you. Other 3 will answer and then disappear after a week. And other 3, I don't know, you won't like them, or the other way around. So if you try with 10, you will meet 1. So we're not gonna go in the business of matching, like Tinder matching tandem partners.
Right.
But more like teaching strategies how to find the right people.
That's really cool. And so you're also saying it's not about just finding 1 person. It's about building a network that you can continue to grow your language learning with.
Is like more, so you have always to plan with failures too. If you are in a field where so much is out of your control, then you have to plan your strategy also with the statistical failures. So I'm not saying you have to be in touch with 10 people. This would be, to stay in touch with 10 people is a lot. I'm saying you should try to write at least to 10 people if you expect to find 1 person with whom you can actually practice the language a bit. And there are strategies to use so that you don't even have to make the first step. You can just go out there and they will write to you. But this is too much detail, maybe. Michel, you wanted to say something.
I can also say that I had a student once who was possibly was looking for a date, but he had 5 tandems at a time, and he quickly improved his German. But I think he mixed certain things with that. So it's possible, if you want and have the time to meet 5 people and practice your German, by all means go for it. But as Alessio said, that's exactly, it's rather more about statistics to find the 1. Yeah.
Exactly. Another thing maybe related to this topic, also to the presentation from Michel. In general, I say Michel instead of Michael because this is German name, but I will start with Michael now so that we all use English names too. I could be Alex. Often we have different opinions and take on things, and in the courses we try to implement them both, so that then you can also try them both and choose. One thing we agree upon is that we're not talking about language exchange just in the traditional sense of 2 people exchanging, excluding other kind of relationship. For me, the most important, so the actual topic is mostly how to practice with natives. So how can you interact with a native speaker in order to improve your language skills? So if you have 5 people in your life who speak that language. One can be a coworker, one can be a person you make exchange with, one can be your spouse, one can be, I don't know, a friend you meet at a bar. The similar principles applies. There are, of course, certain differences, which we address too, but it is how we handle that. And about the structure of the course, one thing which I think is crucial and is that it's also important what a native does. So this is the reason why the course is structured in three main parts. The first part is about this whole experience as a whole, with also examples of activities you can do, because you don't need to just have a conversation, you can do other things. How to structure the meetings and so on. But then the second part is about the student, so the person learning a language, and the whole third part is just about the native person. So how can a native speaker interact with a non-native speaker, have this relationship in a way which is the most possible, so proficient, so productive and teaching for the learner. So yeah, this is also part of the luck, if you find the right people. And if you do it correctly, then yeah, also a friend can help you. You don't need to have another network, right? Another second life where you just practice languages, which would be a lot. Yeah.
Well, and that kind of leads to the other question, which you kind of touched on, which is encountering people at different levels of language. For me, I was thinking, because I come from like a background in music, and the best thing you can do is to play with people better than you. But it requires finding patient people or a fair exchange, because it might take you a minute. So with this, though, you're setting a situation where you're offering to speak a bit in a language they want to learn, and then also exchange that for your learning as well, right? So even if you find someone who's a native speaker in that language, you're also offering the ability to speak natively in yours as well. That's kind of the idea behind it.
Yeah, but it's not so crucial for many reasons. So first thing, I agree with Michael. You can pay a native, and you can pay it also as a non-professional. So as long as you know that it's not a professional, then it's okay. Actually, one of the biggest mistakes people do in language exchange is that they consider the native speaker as a teacher. No, native speaker is very far apart from a teacher. It's like a musician who never studied music, but just is born with a guitar in the hand, right? So has no idea how to learn to do that, usually, I mean, depending on native speakers. So as long as you treat them as native speakers, for example, as a coach, I often integrate in the learning experience of my students also conversations with natives, and I choose very cheap natives, in the sense students, for example, who just want some pocket money. And it's important that they don't even try to play the role of a teacher. They're just there to be natives. In the book, we say in the course, we say that the most important functions is to be an example. So a native speaker is a perfect example of how to use the language, even if not knowing how is doing that. Like it's a mystery. And the other thing is a mistake detector, in the sense that if I make a mistake in your native language, you will feel like a physical, uncomfortable, reaction, like, oh, nah, that was wrong. I don't know why, because I'm not a linguistic professor, but that was wrong. And these two skills are precious for the learner. That's it. From the point of view of the question about the what do I give back? There are two chapters just about those two things, one from the point of view of the native speaker and one from the point of view of the student. And there are a couple of wrong assumptions there, in my opinion. First thing, for the native speaker, can be an amazing experience too. To talk for an hour with someone learning your language is usually quite fascinating. It is very pleasurable. To feel competent and to feel that you can help someone is also good stuff. I mean, most people wouldn't say no. So the idea that you have to give something back is actually flawed. In my experience, for example, as a language learner, I rarely did language exchange per se. 90% of my practice with language, with natives, was just people talking with me, even if I was a beginner, because they find it pleasurable, interesting, I don't know, on many levels. So yeah, it's not necessarily that kind of exchange. If that was your question about how to, one
Yeah,
last
how
thing
to
about
how to
music.
approach it when you're reaching out to people, feeling confident that you are giving something, and you don't have to be nervous, that kind of like you're saying, nervous that you have to like have this like package of compensation to offer someone.
It's better to be thankful.
Mm.
I mean, also because I find it insulting when you give a gift and the other person try to compensate it. I mean, take the gift, be thankful. It's that
Right,
sort of thing.
right, right.
Can I add something to that? It's one of the most difficult things for humans to accept a gift, but it's as difficult for people to give a gift without expectations.
I think
If I
it's
spend
easier
an
to
hour,
give than to take. You're right.
if I spend an hour with you and we speak and we do this regularly, and I see beyond that nothing happens and you don't make any progress, and I have the expectation that you make progress. I have that, but that might be me. But it is nothing more frustrating than spending hour after hour after hour with someone who only meets with you and doesn't do much. Again, some people learn like that, but very few actually just learn from doing that. And the question is always the quality. Without structure, learning without structure is not given to many people. And yeah, and it's really it's not as easy as it sounds, but I totally agree. Find something, and I learned this because I have a business here and I have some other side gig, let's call it, where I give things away for free. People struggle with this, yeah, and sometimes I offer them something in return. You can, God knows, I don't know, give someone else something good, do something somewhere else. So there has to be a balance, yeah. But it's an interesting thing to look into, and that actually makes the whole connection interesting for me as well. It's not only about language; it's about connection and relationship. So look into this. It's not easy. It's really not easy to find someone and to get along. But this is the process you go through anyhow with any relationship in your life. So why not try it in a safe environment of a tandem? Yeah. So really lovely points, and Alessio covers that also in the course. It's nice. It's a nice way to reflect on what are you actually doing there.
Well, I like what you were just saying there too. If it like one of the best gifts for anyone is if they see you actually progressing. So if you're committed to actually learning and growing, that's a gift in itself. And
That's a nice feedback.
if you show up and you're just continually not growing, that's hard for somebody. Yeah, I love that perspective. That's
You
cool.
also learn a lot yourself, because
Right.
the learner is like a mirror where you can see your own, because your own language, so usually people are fascinated when you give a mirror where they can look at their own language, because they are unaware of it. And even I'm a native Italian speaker, which is the only language I don't teach because of this reason, because it's subconscious for me. So it's very hard for me to observe it. It's easier for me to see how my brain learns a foreign language.
Right.
And so my girlfriend, she's German, and she has been learning Italian the last years. Has been fascinating. It's the first time I observed someone learning Italian, because I don't teach it. And it's interesting. I discovered things about Italian, even if I studied Italian linguistics, which I wouldn't have discovered otherwise. So what I'm saying is that there are many angles. There are many reasons why it can be interesting, and different people will react to different things. But the last thing I want to say about this topic maybe is about your metaphor with music. You're a musician. I'm also a bad musician. I think liking music, different levels and different interests can be brought together. Maybe it's not so trivial, so you need some experience or some advice and so on. And if you're on the course and you have questions about specific situations, please ask. I would be happy to answer. But for example, in music, if I just started playing guitar and you're an advanced guitarist, I can just make you a good blues riff and practice my riff, right? While you go crazy on solos and do jet stuff on it. And we can have fun together, even if our levels are incomparable.
Right.
Same thing with languages.
Yeah. Well, and I wanted to segue a little and pivot into, because I'm curious how this addresses it. One of my biggest frustrations trying to learn any language, most recently French, is I've taken years of French, and it seems like there's the French you learn, and then there's the French speak. And no one in France speaks the French you learn.
Yeah.
And so I was curious how, because this seems like a great system to kind of address that. Like, how do you bridge that gap? I know part of it is just speaking with native people, but how does the tandem system kind of address this gap as an overall thing? I've had the experience with German and Spanish too, where there's this big gap between like the language that actually is spoken and the structure that you learn.
Alessio, go for it.
Okay. So your question is very, 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 very wide. So it's on many levels. The feeling of I learned in an environment like schools or books, and then I'm here on the field, on the battlefield, and stuff don't work, it's caused by more than one factor. So it's not just about the language is different itself, which is of course also true, because just from the point of view of vocabulary, usually courses have a limited amount of vocabulary, while native speakers go wild on a lot of more words, right? Use maybe 3 times the words you're used to. And so that's one thing. But it also has to do with what do you mean that you learn the language? And there are certain, so very short, language is a subconscious skill. So in language theory, we call it acquisition, when you develop this subconscious skill of processing language. So for example, now in English, even if I'm doing certain mistakes or I pronounce things weird, most of the time you're not even aware you're processing language. You're just listening to concepts. There are just thoughts popping up in your head, right? You're just trying to figure out what the concepts means. You're not aware of language. And when you learn, so this is acquisition, this is what works, right? But when you learn a language, usually you start from learning. And learning is called this conscious, theoretical learning, which is not operative. It's not working. It's not a skill yet. So when you find yourself in a context of actually using the language, with natives or not, this is the biggest problem, the biggest gap. That stuff goes on, and you try to calculate the language like you were doing maths, right? You're there with, wait, that word means that, so that is an article, so you have to make the adjective to make the you cannot use the language like that. You should acquire it. So your first question, in my opinion, is, it is a very wide one, general one. How do you acquire the language? How do you develop this subconscious skill instead of just learning about the language? And yeah, the answer there is, of course, practice. But like in music, you should break down the practice in bits that you can digest. What I mean is, you should find your scale and practice them to the point where you're not thinking anymore, okay, this is a major G scale, so I will move my fingers, 2 tabs down, and then the next one is a C minor, so I have to, no. You cannot think like that if you want to improvise jazz music with a friend, right? Same thing. You have to do your scales in isolation, the single components of the language, to the point where it becomes an instinct. And there you can start implementing them in actual context. Michael, for example, in his Smarter German course for German, has this preaching technique, which we also are implementing in the Tandem to do it together. Like I was calling it theater, so preaching for 2 is now called. It's very beautiful. Which is exactly a way. So you call it preaching in the sense that, maybe you can explain it even better, is repeating certain pattern, and like a mantra, like a meditation. Meditation in Latin means to practice something, and this allows you to acquire it, to absorb it on a deeper level, so that when you need it, it kicks in automatically. So this is maybe my general answer on what you could work. If you want more detail, you have to tell me where you have the problems more specifically.
Right.
Yeah. Let me
No,
also
but
say
that yeah.
one last sentence to that. So the language you learn that differs so much from the reality is somehow a base requirement for actually figuring out what everybody is doing. So that's the state of the art the moment you turn native. Yeah, but that takes preparation and thorough effort, planned effort
Right.
as well. Yeah.
Well, and I love, Alessio, what you were saying, where just like that, however you learn the language, once it enters the subconscious, then you can start to improvise to enter that stream of what it's actually spoken. So yeah, that helps a lot, because it's so easy to go in thinking you just have this like book of information and that's going to translate over, but it's like
It
you're
doesn't
saying,
work.
having thoughts. Yeah. Actually just thinking in the language is when you'll be able to then integrate. So I love that. Well, thank you both so much. We got to wrap up here for time, but if people have any questions or want to reach out before diving into the course,
It's a potato.
Michael's a potato. How can they reach out to you? How can they find you? Is there somewhere they can contact you?
I'm stuck now with a potato one. Sorry.
You're stuck. It's too late.
My apologies.
Yeah, sure. Well, you find us, of course, on Smarter German. Otherwise, I will add it here. This is my page where I develop video games for language learning. This is another thing I am doing in case here someone is interested in video games for language learning. Come visit me at Speaksale, say hello. And yeah, otherwise, I mean, see you in the courses, I would say.
Yeah.
Thank you for your time.
Awesome.
Thanks, Jonah, as well.
Of course.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, such a pleasure. And once more for everyone, the links to the course, they're in the comment section, they're in the description, and they'll be emailed to you along with the course offer if you RSVP'd to the event. And if you enjoyed today's event, please like and subscribe to the Discover channel. We're continually trying to bring artists, entrepreneurs, language learners, all these people here to help us all grow and become better people in every way we can. And once again, thank you so much both for being here. Thank you everyone who's here and watching the replay. And if you're watching the replay, feel free to drop comments into it. We love coming back and seeing what you're thinking, where you came from, and all of that. But for now, I hope you both have a wonderful day, and everyone who's watching as well. We'll see you all soon.
Yeah, you too. Thank you, Jonah.
Bye.
See you later.